He is the color analyst for the Army radio broadcast. Dean, thanks so much for coming on again. And, man, looking forward to this. This is fun. Houston Army have not played in a good long time. This should be a fun one on Saturday.
Yeah, I actually called the game that was up there in '96 when Donovan McNabb came out, and they led the team down the field early and took a big lead, and it was interesting. Great crowd. I haven't been back to the Dome since, so I'm looking forward to it.
What is your sense, Dean? You know, we know this. Like, there's you can find Army people that have been in the Army all over the country. Obviously, Fort Drum is not that far up the road from here.
Right.
What is your sense as far as, you know, a volume of Army supporters that will be there on Saturday?
Yeah, I would hope, since it's Military Appreciation Day, I think that's big. I think the general population will come out. And you bring up a good point about Fort Drum. I've got to ask about that. Insulation isn't all that far, so I think that would be very interesting. It's funny you brought up Fort Drum, because some of the players this year, they're going in to their senior year from this summer, actually participated in drills at Fort Drum. They actually shadowed like first lieutenants at there, and they were very they really appreciated what the Army soldier goes through up there.
Going back to when Doug Marrone was the coach here, they actually did it for a few years. They'd go up for a few days. The Syracuse team would go up there and bring training camp up there for a summer, and the drill instructors would put them through stuff. It was kind of cool. You know, for the Army guys, you know, they got to get used to what they're actually going to see in the future. But yeah. I always enjoyed that from the Syracuse perspective. They're like, all right, you're training for football. Here's something a little different to get used to.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, I think it will be a good game. I think a lot depends on Army's offense. We know what Syracuse's offense can do. We know about Syracuse's defense. But I think if Army can kind of blueprint what they did last week against UTSA and basically hog the ball for 44 and a half minutes, then they have a good opportunity. It was funny. I was talking to the defensive coordinator today. We usually talk on Thursdays. And I said, what are your game keys? He acted like an offensive coordinator. He said, we got to run the football, and we can't have any turnovers. So that tells you where his mindset is.
Yeah, there's the one real way to make his job a lot easier is to not have to do it for most of the day is the main thing.
Exactly. When your defense is only on for like 30 plays, that's a win right there.
Yeah, I know, Dean, when we talked back a few months ago, you knew the new offense had been installed by that point. You'd seen it maybe in practice, but it's different to see it in a game. What do you make 3 games in of, the old school triple option is gone, Army's doing something different? What has it looked like through 3 games?
Well, to tell you the truth, I wasn't real pleased with what I saw in the first game down at Louisiana Monroe. It just didn't look like they were all on the same page. And one of my co-announcers brought up a good point. You don't get an exhibition game in college football. You're going live bullets right from the first whistle, right? So they didn't play that well down there. Then they had Delaware State. That was a little bit hard to evaluate because obviously they're a much smaller school in the FCS division. And then last week I was really pleasantly surprised because they opened it up. And what the offensive coordinator was saying to me is he's learning to make the right calls for the quarterback and the rest of the team. It's a learning process. He's in his first year. He has brought this offense in, but he's used different elements of it at different places. So he's basically trying to adapt to their personnel right now. And it's basically, it's all shotgun, basically. I haven't seen him go under center at all yet this year. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's a lot of quarterback runs. It is some RPO. They did some trickery last week. They threw a double pass for 55 yards. That was good to see. And they've got a really good wide receiver in Isaiah Alston. So they throw in the quick slant, but it's predicated a lot on the run offense, and the offensive line has done very well. In fact, all 4 out of the 5 played all 83 snaps last week, and the other guy played 75 snaps. So if the offensive line can do something in this game, then they'll do a good job with their inside handoffs, their read options. But the quarterback, he's averaging about 20 carries a game.
Wow, that's we talk about Garrett Schrader taking a lot of hits. That's a lot of contact for Bryson Daly to deal with. And, you said it, Army's still running the ball a lot, averaging 235 yards on the ground, but 177 passing yards a game so far, albeit very early. That's more than 100 yards a game more than last year. And, it's rare to see Army, going back to the old school triple option days to throw for even 100 yards a game. Tell me about Bryson Daly. What is allowing him, at least the last 2 weeks, to have the success that he's having right now?
I think he's a lot like Schrader. I think he's a big, physical, tough kid. He's not obviously as tall as him. He's a little over 6'1", but he's compact at 215, and he kind of runs like a fullback. I mean, he has showed some pretty good quickness when he gets to the crease, but he just tries to bowl people over, and he takes a lot of hits. He ran against ULM the first game, he ran 23 times. Then they tapered it down against Delaware State. He ran 9, and then last week he was up around 20. But he's a guy that his arm can get him in trouble, but his arm can also be very accurate. I think when he feels that he's got to force the throw a little bit, he gets into trouble. That happened in the first game. I haven't seen that in the last couple of games. They threw some nice wrinkles in the passing game last week. They had a really nice seam pass to Noah Short. He's a guy they brought over from the defense. He's got some speed. So as long as they can roll him out, he doesn't always just throw it from the pocket. They roll him out. Sometimes he gets a good vision and throws the ball down the field, but his strength is definitely his running style.
Yeah, and heck, not that it takes a lot of passing yardage to climb the Army career list, but if he keeps this going this season, it'll be one of the best passing seasons in school history. Just because it wasn't done just intentionally over the years.
Back in the day, it was, and then I'll never forget. Jim Young came in from Purdue, right? He was the head coach of Purdue, and he came into Army back in 1983, and he tried to run the same offense as Purdue. And you can't do that at West Point. You can't get the linemen, you can't get the wide receivers, and he quickly turned just like that, and he schooled himself. He brought in all these people that were really good with the option offense, and they went right to the option in 84. And that year, in first year triple option, they went to the Cherry Bowl and beat Michigan State.
Yeah, I'd say like when that was effective, it was really, really effective. As recently as a couple of years ago, before they changed the cup blocking rules, Army had on 9 months.
That one really. I was a little surprised that Navy actually stayed with it. And Air Force has always been kind of, they call it the flex bone, where they deploy 4 wide receivers that they're really like slot backs, but they get them out there and they try to force you into single coverage.
Dean Darling is with us. He's the Army color analyst on their radio broadcast. Has been there a long time doing it. Has seen it all here with the Black Knights. And Jeff Monken, now the head coach, Dean, he's been at it for a decade. Well, what does this say about Jeff that, he was willing and able to make this change? I think he realized it had to be done, but, that's easier said than done, right, when you look at how Army's played football for so long.
Brian, my first meeting, I was blown away. And all I asked him is, what has to happen with Army football? What needs to change? And I will never get his answer. He goes, toughness. We're not tough enough. And that would really make you scratch your head at West Point, right? And he was talking about the mental and the physical aspect of it. And it took him at least 2 years to get his points across, increase the strength, weight training, and things of that nature. And now, we have offensive linemen that are all over 300 pounds. That was unheard of at one day. So his whole approach, he just renewed his contract. He just got a contract extension through 27. His whole thing is he really fits the mold of an Army football coach with that whole brand of toughness and his whole mental aspect. And I think it was a great move to keep him there. And he seems like he's a pretty happy camper. Yeah,
that extension got announced earlier this week on Monday. And you know this, Dean, it takes the right type of guy to coach at a service academy, but even then, it feels like the shelf life can even be shorter just because of all of the extra stuff you have to deal with to fit into the military lifestyle. What does that say about Jeff that, man, add that on, you're looking at 15, 16 years at minimum, it looks like, being in charge of this team?
You know what, Brian, the way I look at it, he came up through the ranks. He played Division III football, right? So that's a lot of doing stuff on your own. And then he was an FCS coach as a head coach after he was at Navy for a while. And he learned a lot under Paul Johnson. But I think him coming up through the ranks, and he always wants to talk about FCS teams because he really appreciates they don't have all the assets that an FCS team has. So, or FBS, I should say. So I think he's really learned through the ropes. You really have to bring it from the ground up. And I watched it in the first couple of years. I mean, he was an angry guy a lot in those first 2 years. And it was whole thing about this is the way we're going to do things. And if you don't like the way it is, then move on. And basically I saw it. He came there in 14, and I really saw the tide start to turn in 15, lost a lot of close games, and then in 16, program kind of took off. And that's when they started going to bowls and starting to beat Navy again because they had lost 14 in a row to Navy at one point.
Yeah, and we know if there's any unforgivable sin for an Army head coach, that is 1 through 10. It feels like on the list of not being able to beat Navy.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to lose to Navy, that's for sure.
No, like your season can be a disaster, but if you go win that game, all is good come the end of the year.
Yep.
Dean Darling with us talking some Army football here. We've talked a lot about Bryson Daly, the quarterback. It's not just him. He's doing a lot. What about Hayden Reed? He's the lead running back. What kind of player should Syracuse fans look for when they look at Hayden on Saturday?
He's a great story, Brian. I mean, he's a kid out of Tampa, Florida, played fullback because we were in the triple option last year. And you really couldn't really get a really deciding factor about his ability. You could tell he was tough, and when he ran hard. But I didn't really see until last week. When he got on the perimeter, I think it was the second, third play of the game, showed a little getty up. And so I was asking the offensive coordinator about him. He goes, most unassuming kid, very quiet, shy. But when he puts on the helmet, it becomes a different type of personality, and he's very aggressive, and he's very physical in his running style. He's a guy I think people up at the Dome are going to enjoy watching him play.
All right, so, with Army, Dean, we because of the switch in the offense and the unique style before and now, we spend so much time talking about the offense. Give us a little insight to the defense. So what is this group doing? And obviously, it's a lot easier to do it when you're not on the field a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's an experienced defense when you look at it along the defensive line, the linebackers. Leo Lowen, he had 100 tackles last year. He's their weak side linebacker. He seems to be attracted to the ball all the time. And on the back line, been impressed with the cornerbacks. They're two seasoned guys, Cam Jones and Jabari Moore. And people have been trying to go after them early this year, where at one time the Army just would get abused in their cornerback positions because the athletes are just much different than when they come play a Power 5 team. But I'll tell you what, they stood up well last week. They stood up well 2 weeks ago. So those are two key guys. Q Hammond's a strong safety, very good. If they can get a push from the defensive line, they're even a better team. They gave up 2 big pass plays. They hate that. They call them cheap ones over top their head. I anticipate that might happen on Saturday from Syracuse. But I'll tell you what, they defend the run pretty well. They've only given up 8 explosive plays in the ground game this year. So I said to the defense coordinator, what do you call an explosive play? Like, what's the yardage? He goes, 10 yards. Anything over 10 yards, that's explosive, and we're not happy about it. They've only given 8 of those in 3 games.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's actually a lower number than what most people go by when they're talking about the passing game. So that is a high standard there. Lastly, Dean, before we let you go, conference realignment, it keeps churning. SMU is going to be leaving the American. The rumors are fast flying that Army may be the team to replace them. You have any insight to that? And do you think it would make sense if Army were to jump back in the conference for the first time in a long time?
Well, to answer your question, do I have any insight? No. But what I hear when I hear the athletic director speak and when I hear the coach speak, they kind of seem to be hedging that way. I think it's a bunch of things that's got to get worked out, basically. And are they going to go to 2 different divisions in the American Conference? Is Navy going to be a non-conference game? Will it still be played in that second weekend window that really attracts a large audience? I think those are all things. And then what about your future contracts that you've signed with other teams? I mean, you can't be buying out everybody. So probably it's a financial type of talk right now. Something tells me it's going to happen. I was there when they went to Conference USA. Let me tell you, that wasn't pleasant. We were in way over our heads. And the offense we were trying to run just didn't work. They were trying to basically run a run and shoot, and that didn't work at all. So if we're going to go, this is the guy to go with, Jeff Monken. I see the athletes each year are just getting better and better. They're coming to West Point. So I got a feeling it's going to happen. I don't know exactly when it will happen, but I got a feeling it's going to happen.
All right, Dean, something to keep an eye on. The world like that just keeps churning and churning around us, for sure. All right, man, great to chat again. Safe travels up this way this weekend, and enjoy the game on Saturday, okay?
So much, Brian. Enjoyed being on with you.
All right, that is Dean Darling, part of the Army radio broadcast. Always good to chat with Dean. Looking forward to this one. It's a fun game. Dean mentioned it hasn't happened since McNabb was here back in '96, and now it's going to be 4 straight years, 2 games in the Dome, and the even number years coming up, it'll be down in Michie Stadium, which I have been told, and many have been told, if you're going to go, it's a place to go see a game, man. You get to Michie, the leaves turning, the foliage, the whole thing, banks of the Hudson. As scenic as you'd like in the world of college football, but that is something we will get into next year. Right now, we're going to get into a break on this hour brought to you by William Mattar. Hurt in a car, call William Mattar, 444-4444. When we come back, lacrosse news. Another Spallina? Where are they coming from? We'll tell you about that after this. It's QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.